So by the time I went through in the late 90s, the rules had changed significantly. So there was no physical contact. So there was no kicking. If you've ever heard of a soap party, I think it's called a soap party. They're back in the 80s, they would take a towel, put a bar of soap, roll up the towel, and then hold the two ends. And then you'd have this bar of soap. So it was like a club.
Okay.
And they would club each other and or club people like that. All that was gone. So there was no physical touching, but there was still a lot of emotional and verbal abuse that could happen.
Yeah.
Plus, they had control of your environment. So they could turn up the heat, open all the windows, have you be in your shorts. Like they could use the elements to their favor too. And that it was a thing. I had a good friend of mine who was taken out of one of our recognition drills because he went hypothermic, because they were making him low crawl through icy water and then just have him go through again and again and again, like going through one of their hazing sessions. And eventually he turned hypothermic and a medic had to take him out and somebody probably got read the riot act. So I was blessed because there was no physical abuse hands-on, but there was still the challenge of having folks demean you and yell at you and, overwhelm you with tasks, something called task saturation, all very useful training for what you engage in the military and what you engage at CIA, but maybe not so useful when you're a 19-year-old in college.
Yeah. I mean, I think they still do stuff like that, right?
They do. And so there's been another big revolution or another big evolution. So circa 2005, 2010, somewhere in there, the military academies and the military changed again. And they became, the emotional abuse kind of started getting taken away. The hours at which you were available for them to haze you, those also got decreased. There's actually been, there may have been two evolutions. The one in 2005, which kind of made things more kinder, gentler. You still get beat, but your beat down sessions are more humane. And then another big change just in the last year or two, where you don't even have to be fit anymore.
What?
Yeah. The military actually now has a program so that people who don't meet the basic requirements to get into the military can still get into the military. And then they basically go to fat camp in the military to bring them up to the basic military standard for fitness. They can also go to a secondary school to bring them up to the basic minimum for knowledge and education. So if you're, like in the past, if you weren't smart enough or if you were overweight, you just didn't qualify.
Yeah.
But now there's such a recruiting crisis going on in the military that they're taking people who are overweight and undereducated and then essentially paying them a salary as a soldier to be brought up to minimum soldier requirements.
What are your thoughts about that?
Mixed.
I can see both sides.
I can see both sides. I do believe that the warfighter of tomorrow isn't going to look like the warfighter of yesterday, right? You don't necessarily need to make every soldier a rifleman anymore because some soldiers need to drive drones. Some soldiers need to fly satellites. Some soldiers they're going to be big in the middle. And that's what you need them to be, because you need them to be in that chair staring at that screen 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
So the warfighter of tomorrow looks different, so maybe it's okay, right? Maybe we need to adapt and embrace that kind of warfighter. We still have our tier 1 operators. There's always going to be a need and a place for elite, physically fit, lethal men and women, always. But that doesn't mean everybody has to be lethal, trim, and fit. Not if it keeps us safer.
Yeah.
And frankly speaking, I don't need a linguist to be able to do 50 push-ups. I need a linguist to be able to speak the friggin' language at a masterful level. If they want to sit there and eat Cheetos and die of diabetes when they're 65 years old, that's on them, as long as they keep us safe until they pass away of diabetes.
Yeah, that's such a valid point, right? Because when you first said that, I was like, I don't know. That doesn't sound like, I don't know. When you think of people in the military, you want them to be fit and smart and all these things. But you're right. The warfighter of today is completely different than, many, many years ago. So it is. Yeah, that's just, I didn't even know they were doing stuff like that.